Greetings, friends and followers. This is Nurses Talking. I am Del Barzi. As always, if you like what you see and hear, subscribe. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. This is Nurses Talking. Here on Nurses Talking, we speak to nurses anywhere in the world and at any stage in their nursing journey, from students to retirees and anywhere in between. And so today, I'm very pleased to welcome Casey Jones. Casey has been a registered nurse for 12 years. She graduated from Chattanooga State Community College in 2011. She has since gone on to work in various settings, including med-surg, in travel nursing, referral management for the Air Force in Ramstein, Germany, oncology infusion, and most recently, she started her own freelance health content writing business called Nursecaseywrites. She lives in the beautiful upstate of South Carolina and enjoys chasing her 2-year-old, spending time in the mountains or at the beach and gardening in her free time. So welcome, Casey, and thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm doing very well today. I'm on my day off, so it's good.
That works. So I'm always curious, and I always want people to articulate why they're nurses. So why are you a nurse?
That is a good question. So I had kind of always wanted to be a nurse ever since I was little. My best friend's dad was actually an anesthesiologist, and I spent a lot of time over at their house and always saw him, wearing scrubs, and he was on call all the time and running back and forth to the hospital. And I would ask him all kinds of questions about what he did and what, nurses did and stuff like that in the hospital. And yeah, that was kind of like my first, intro into nursing in the medical field, because my parents, neither one of them were in the medical field. My grandmother was a nurse. But other than that, once I decided to go to nursing school, I was the first one in my family other than my grandmother. So yeah, that's kind of what started it, growing up with my friend's dad being an anesthesiologist, and being interested in what he was doing. And then I always wanted a job where I could help people. I didn't want just, a desk job or sitting in an office.
Yeah.
I like to move around. Most nurses do. We don't like to sit still.
Yes.
And I like the variety of nursing. There's so many different areas. So if, you get into one specialty and you decide like, oh, this isn't really for me, you can go a totally different route. And that was really intriguing to me. So that's kind of how I fell into nursing. But as soon as I went to school, that was what I had in mind. So I just went for it.
Oh, given that that is what you always wanted, and your friend's dad being an anesthesiologist, I gather it was probably a little bit of a glamorous kind of thing for you.
Yes. They had money, and it was always fun going to her house, and it seemed very glamorous. But of course, being a nurse isn't.
Yeah, so that's what I was about to ask you, because once you got into nursing, was it what you thought?
No, not at all. And to be honest, I think I was pretty naive. I was very young. I had never even been in a hospital before, other than I think 1 or 2 times I had gone with my mom to visit like a church member or something that was hospitalized. But really, I had no idea what I was getting into. I just had it in my head that I wanted to be a nurse. And it wasn't until my, clinicals in nursing school was my first, time in the hospital, really. And so my eyes were opened. Was not what I thought it was. It was and it wasn't. I mean, there was definitely things that, I knew that it was going to be stressful
Mm-hmm.
and,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
hard at times, but I had no clue, the environment I was going into and how people can treat you sometimes. I had kind of grown up in a very sheltered
Yeah.
little bubble.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So I
I can
had a
I
lot of growing to do in those first years.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was the biggest challenge for you though?
The biggest challenge for me when I was first starting out, and even still today sometimes, is I think like time management. Um, and especially at first, it was just I would get so overwhelmed. I started on a med surge floor, and it was a very busy med surge floor. Lots of discharges and admits, and a lot of very critically ill patients. And it was very stressful for me because I would have all these tasks, and I didn't know, even where to start
How to
with
prioritize.
how to
Yeah.
prioritize. I mean, they kind of teach you that in nursing school, but not really. It's something I think you have to learn as you go. And so that was probably my biggest challenge, was just learning how to prioritize tasks and how to actually chart as you go.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I started out, I would just work. I'd do everything I need to do. And then I'd get, at the end of my shift, my 12-hour shift, and I'd be like, I haven't charted anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I'd be there till 10 o'clock,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a big challenge, especially at first. So
Yeah. Yeah. That can be a challenge. So you started on med surge.
mhm.
Did you work any other areas? What areas did you work?
So I started on med surge. I worked on that floor, I think about 15 months. That's as long as I could handle it. It was so
Mm,
difficult. And I ended up, after that, I did some travel nursing. Um, my now husband, he was my boyfriend at the time, he was in the Air Force, stationed in Texas. And so I did a travel nurse assignment so that I could be close to him for a couple months. I worked down there on a telemetry floor, and did not like that at all. It took me a while to find my niche and
yeah.
passionate about. And there was many years where I almost totally left nursing because I was so overwhelmed and burnt
Mm-hmm.
out already, after
Mm-hmm.
only a couple years. And so after travel nursing, I did some, home health for a little while. And I've also worked in an infusion clinic that was like non-oncology.
Yeah.
Um, and then eventually, let's see, so then we went to Ramstein, Germany. I worked for the TRICARE referral management. So I basically was in charge of all of the outpatient referrals for military members and like their family members. So if they needed a referral to like physical therapy or
Yeah.
occupational therapy or something like that, and they needed to go off base, we would arrange it with like a German
Uh-huh.
provider, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I did that for a little while, and then eventually, when we moved back to the States, I started working in oncology infusion, and that's where I really found my passion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I instantly loved it. It was just enough critical thinking and, learning, because you have all those new drugs you have to learn and
Yeah.
new
Yeah.
challenges with that. So it's been kind of just enough to keep me feeling like I'm still using skills and I'm still using my brain, but it's not so overwhelming like the hospital can be sometimes.
Yeah. 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 So that is where you still are.
That's where I still,
Oncology infusion.
yeah, I've been doing that for about 5 years now.
Okay. So you talked about um feeling burnt out so very early on.
Yes.
And one of the things I really want to know is do you think that um well, let me rephrase that question. In your nursing education, was there anything that prepared you for this burnout?
Not that I remember.
No. So there
I
was
wish
no way
there
for
would
you
have
to
been.
recognize it.
No, no. And, I'll speak just for myself because, if I, maybe some of my classmates would say that, yes, we did have education on that, but I don't really, I don't remember that. And I was not prepared um, for burnout. And we
Yeah.
didn't really learn self-care
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that. I'm sure they probably teach that more now. I think it's more of a talked about thing these days.
And that's why I ask. That's why I ask, because I feel like that is one of the biggest contributing factors to nursing burnout, is that we're totally unprepared
Mhm.
for that kind of thing. The education, yes, talks about taking care of everyone else. Gives you no insight or no clue as to how this is going to affect you or how much it's going to require of you. And so you think you know it, you think you know things.
Yes. So true. Until you get out in the real world and start doing it, and then
You have no clue. Yeah,
reality hits you.
yeah. So having talked about that though, what, if anything, you think you'd like to see change?
Um, well, for starters, if they don't teach that in nursing school, they definitely should. They should have a whole section on the potential for burning out and how to prevent that.
Mhm,
Different things you can do, self-care,
mhm.
instead of just mentioning it briefly, like, oh, you need to take care of yourself. Okay, well, what does that mean? How do I do that? When I'm 19, 20 years old, like, I don't even know what that means. I've never been stressed out really. Um, so I think that's a good start. Um, but then I think also, especially working in the hospital, and you get it some in outpatient settings as well. Um, the the way nursing is these days, how they're just overloading you with patients, and the patient to nurse ratios are so high. And I think it's just nurses are tired of it, and it makes you burn out very quickly. And not only that, it's not safe. And we all went into nursing because we care about people and we want to, help people, but we want to be able to do it safely. We don't want to feel like, we can't even focus on what's actually going on with our patients when we have seven,
Yeah, yeah.
critical patients we're trying to take care of. And it's just, I think a lot of people think there's a nursing shortage, but I don't even really think there's a nursing shortage. I think there's a shortage of nurses who want to work in that environment. Leaving the hospital because of the
Yeah,
way it is.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. And fortunately for us, nursing does allow you to not have to do it.
right.
Fortunately and unfortunately, actually. It's fortunate for us, but for those who are still at the bedside in the trenches, and I give them all my heart every single day. Um, it's hard. It's unfortunate that they're left so short of staff.
Mhm.
But it's burning out people.
Yeah. So I guess I don't know what the answer is exactly, but maybe if there could be some sort of, federal, law or something where nurses, on certain floors can only take so many patients. And the hospital absolutely cannot give you, more than 4 or 5 on a, med surge floor, or, 2 in an ICU. Um, I don't know. I think that would be great, and that would probably solve a lot of the nursing shortage. A lot of people would probably come back to the hospitals. It was regulated, so
Kind of think that
yeah,
um, unless and until nurses are the ones making those decisions,
mhm,
it's not going to happen. Nurses
right,
have to be, there's got to be a higher representation of us in the C-suites.
yeah, exactly. Because the people making the decisions have no idea
Right? That's
what
not
it's
their
actually like.
focus. That's
Mm-mm,
that that's not their focus. I can't even blame them for the decisions they make, because their focus is not that at all. Their focus is it's a business, and that's the fact of it. At the end of the day, as much as we care, or it has to be paid for.
Right.
And that is their focus. Somehow, we have to be able to marry these two things. And I think that nurses, in more positions, of management, of upper management,
Yeah.
will at least help to do that.
Yes, I agree.
Anyway, you talked about self-care. You mentioned self-care and how you think it should be included, but what does it mean to you? Because it means different things to every person. What does it mean to you?
Absolutely. To me, I think it is very individual. Every person has different things that they do to, relax or feel recharged. Different things that make you, energetic or that you're passionate about. For me, it's spending time outside. I like to spend time in nature, whether it could be anything. I just love all the outdoor activities, biking, hiking, kayaking, camping, everything. So when I go out in nature, I just feel like I have a more positive outlook on life. Everything's going to be okay. Gives me energy, and I just love it. That to me, and then also, physical activity like yoga. I also enjoy that. Meditation's great. If you actually do it, I feel like we love to talk about meditation and how helpful it is, but you have to actually practice that. But that's kind of what I do for self-care. And then also I think just being silent. So putting your phone or iPad or computer away and just, being silent during the day and just letting whatever thoughts come in, and then kind of just recognize what kind of thoughts you're having, what happened that day and how it's making you feel. And I think just reflecting on that is a big self-care thing for me as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is because and you talked about practicing meditation. That was a big word in that for me because first of all, we say, as you said, we say meditation. It's not really easy.
No.
And it has to be practiced. You have to be actively pursuing it. So
easier said than done.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. So you segued into writing, right? Nurse KC writes. Did you always like to write?
I have always liked to write. Of course, it took me a while after being in school for so long for me to want to write again. You just feel like you're always writing and reading.
And always researching something.
Always researching something. So it wasn't until recently that I started writing again, for fun or for potentially, to make money, make it as a career. But I've always enjoyed it. I've always been good at it. And I honestly didn't even know it was an option for nurses to be writers until maybe a year or so ago. I got an ad on social media for a nurse writer. And I was like, what is this? I thought it was a scam. I had to look into it, and I was
No
like,
scam.
and then I realized it's not a scam. It's a real thing. And, you can do it. And I just kind of thought about it for probably at least a year and thought about, if that's something I thought I would like. And if, it's always kind of scary to start your own business, no matter what it is, even though it's basically you can start a writing business with almost no cost. So, but it's still a little nerve-wracking because you're having to put yourself out there and
Yeah.
scary, but it's exciting. And just the prospect of the idea that I could help educate patients in a different way away from the bedside and try to clear up some of the misinformation that's on the internet. So that's what kind of intrigued me.
Yeah. And that's a big one. There's, misinformation. There's so much stuff out there.
Yeah. Anybody can, write and post something on the internet. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's important.
Where do you see nursing in about 10 years? What do you hope to see?
Well, I hope that some big changes have been made all across the country, because I think obviously nursing is a fantastic profession, and I want people to keep wanting to become nurse. We need nurses. We need people to take care of us when we're sick or injured. So I think in order to do that, we're just going to have to make a lot of changes as far as you know the ratios, the
Yeah.
overworking. You got to make it a better environment, and I think it needs to be more regulated, because
Yeah.
I've worked in both unionized hospitals and mostly non-unionized. Only when I lived out in Oregon was it
Mm.
unionized, and it was amazing. Um, the satisfaction, we were all very happy. We all got our breaks. We got to eat, like normal people at their job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Use the bathroom, and it was all regulated. We could only have so many patients, during the day, and we could only work so many hours. So I'd like to see something like that everywhere. Not necessarily, I realize that unionizing is not for everybody or every hospital, but just some sort of regulation on, so that we can keep nurses and we can keep patients safe, because that's really what it's about. It's not about,
Yeah.
necessarily, it's not 100% about just the nurses,
Yeah.
having a potty break or being able to eat. It's really more about, keeping the patient safe.
Yeah.
It's the right
Yeah.
thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And in order to keep the patient safe, we actually have to keep you safe.
Exactly. And you want
So
your nurse to feel safe, and
yeah. Yeah. In many ways, physically safe, emotionally. I say that we're now practicing the way we practice defensive driving. We're now, we drive defensively. We now have to practice defensive nursing. Um, and that takes up a whole big chunk of your consciousness when you're working.
yeah,
Um,
that's true.
and contributes to the unease and dis-ease that you feel about doing things, and the number of times you go back and check yourself, make sure, and all of this kind of thing. So yeah, policy wise and a way to enforce policy,
Yeah, definitely.
probably. Yeah. What advice though would you give to someone who wants to be a nurse? You've been a nurse now for 12 years. What advice would you give to someone who wants to do this?
I would say make sure that you really know what you're getting into. Ideally, you could, shadow somebody who's a nurse, and you don't necessarily have to work med surg or in the hospital on the floor. Like kind of 12 years ago when I started, it was like you started in med surg and that's what you did, and you don't have to do that. There's all kinds of nursing jobs, and you can get a job somewhere else as a new nurse. So don't feel like you have to put yourself through that if that's not what you want. I would say make sure you know what you're getting into. Make sure that you actually want to do it. Kind of look at your motivation. If you're
Yeah.
doing it just for the money or the fact that you can easily get a job anywhere, don't do it. There's other things you can do. Uh, but if you truly want to help people, it is an extremely rewarding career.
Yeah.
So I would just say take a look at your motivations, and yeah, try to shadow or even work as a CNA in the hospital just to have
Yeah.
exposure to it. I think that
Yeah.
would have helped me a lot just with my stress and anxiety. I think it would have helped me a lot just to know what the environment was like, and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
how to
Yeah.
take care of patients. So
Yeah. Yeah. Because in no way, shape, or form is it easy. And you're coming into this apprehensive as it is, because, you're new to this, and
Mhm.
then, your patient has no idea that you just graduated yesterday or
Yeah,
whatever.
you have to pretend. Take it till you make it.
They want what they want, and they're not going for you to think 3 times about it, or
Yeah.
well,
Mhm.
this kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah.
If you had to describe, though, the most essential quality of a nurse in one word, what would that word be?
Ooh, I would say probably compassion. I feel like
Okay.
that is huge. And that kind of encompasses, in my mind, what a nurse is. Should be compassionate and have compassion because that really helps you care for people, to the best of your ability. If you can have like empathy and compassion for what they're going
Yeah.
through.
Yeah. Yeah. That word comes up a lot, and I ask it of almost every nurse that I talk to. It comes up a lot, and the reason I ask it is because I think that after a while we start recognizing each other without anyone telling us that someone is a nurse. You start recognizing these qualities in people. Yeah, that person is a nurse. And compassion comes up quite a bit. The one thing I say about compassion, though, is that we talk about it a lot. It comes to our mind when we think of qualities that we should have. Compassion is very high on the list. And I just want us to learn to extend some of that compassion to ourselves, because sometimes we don't. In fact, often we don't.
Yes. I think that's a common theme with nurses, especially.
Mhm. Often we don't. So, I really, really want to see us do that.
Yeah.
Really want to see us do that. Casey, it's been such a great honor talking to you.
This has been very fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for doing this. Is there any little thing you would like to leave us with before you go?
Um, I would say just keep fighting. We got to keep, standing up for what we know
Yeah,
is right. And I
yeah,
think that's the only way anything is going to change. We have to be loud. It's time to
yeah.
get loud.
It's time
That's
to
the
get loud. Yeah.
exactly. It's the only way anything's going to change because as nurses, just I think who we are, we tend to be quiet and we don't want to complain. We
Yeah,
want to, like you said, we take care of others really well. We don't do as
yeah,
well taking care of ourselves, but we need to, and we need to get loud so changes will be made, and it'll
yeah,
be a better environment for everybody.
yeah.
So that's what I would say.
On that note, thank you so very, very much for being here today.
Of course, it was a pleasure.
It's my pleasure. Bye.